Well, hello. This is Loppon Yudron Wangmo, and I'm here in California. Well, actually, when you're seeing this video, I'm going to be off the coast of Alaska in the Arctic, and that's why I'm recording this video ahead of time. Wish I could be there with you live. So when I was looking at this program of amazing speakers, I was thinking about what's the missing piece, and oftentimes the missing piece for people who are engaging, particularly recently, learning Dharma in an online environment, is understanding what the order of things is. How do you start? And what are the steps of engaging in the Buddhist path if you decide to do so? And so now I audaciously named this talk, Your Pledge of Awakening. And what that means is what's the first step to actually engaging in the Buddhist path is doing a ceremony called going for refuge. I mean, it could be a ceremony that you do with yourself, but typically, and better, is doing a formal ceremony. So I'm going to talk about what that is, what the purpose of that is, how you do that, what the ceremony is like, and what it means, and also what would make you want to do such a thing. All right? So in this 45 minutes, that's the topic, particularly for people who may not be affiliated with a specific Dharma center, and so for those people, it's really clear, because the center will tell you what order you do things in, but it's a whole different world now, right? Where we're all learning about Dharma digitally or in books, and not necessarily from face-to-face with humans. So I'm going to be your face-to-face human today. So backing up, I want to bring our attention to the fact that we are human beings. And when you think about it, even as a human being, human beings have evolved from little flappy finned tetrapods, four-finned creatures that, came onto land after snouting around in the muck at the edge of continents for a long time. They gradually evolved, and we're talking over hundreds of millions of years, onto land, and then into a series of animal stages, and then different branches of human-like creatures called hominins, human or primate-like creatures. And it really wasn't until like 200,000 years ago that we had the kind of brain that we have now. And we could, as far as they can tell, conjecturing back using all the scientists with their magic ways, we didn't have this capacity to think and reason and consider the bigger picture. If you think about, we've all watched beautiful YouTube videos about animals who are display acts of kindness, to them, creatures of their species, but creatures of other species sometimes. Occasionally that does happen. So, good animals evolve, or spring up, let's say. But really, animal brains lack the capacity to back away from the situation and look at the bigger picture, which is what we're doing right now, right? We're looking at where we sit, how precious this opportunity is as someone with the brain we have, the whole body we have, our upright posture, and so forth. In the whole history of this, of our ancestors, it's really a very short period of time, hundreds of thousands of years versus hundreds of millions of years, that could even dream of Dharma, of the spiritual path. And then since then, it's only been a few thousand years since the written language was evolved. Try to imagine that you're in a hunter-gatherer society and everything you learn was from your family or from people. Apparently tourism was a thing in the ancient world, or people exploring, going on canoe trips, or you know, expeditions and meeting other small bands of people. So imagine how narrow your world would be before the written word, when knowledge could be passed from one person to the next via a book. And even then, you know, it was only 2,500 years ago that the Buddha exists. So we exist in the era of Buddha Shakyamuni, the great teacher, who, sitting on his pile of grass under the Bodhi tree 2,500 years ago, woke up in the middle of the night after all his different attempts to find a correct spiritual path that really yielded a solution to the fundamental problem of suffering in this world. He had a breakthrough, and a permanent one, not a falling back kind of one. And from our, you know, northern Buddhist traditions, like all the Mahayana, China, Korea, Tibet, etc., Vietnam, Buddha, this was a culmination of many lives of development, so he was evolving his consciousness and was a great being in previous lives. But he is the Buddha, he is our Buddha, right? So that's one way of appreciating just how special this opportunity is that we have in this life. Really, really rare in the whole history of humankind. And then if you look at the world of animals, none of the animals have the capacities that we have. And what else? And then, you know, if you look at things, if you're naturally inclined to Buddhist ways of thinking, our consciousness has been, there's something about our consciousness that has been continuing lifetime after lifetime. And we've been animals, we've been ghosts, we've been every conceivable kind of creature, even those we can't even conceive of yet, right? And we call them sentient beings, living, you know, which sets us apart from trees, which have a little bit of consciousness maybe, but they aren't fully, you know, beings with minds is what the word is in Tibetan. Beings with minds, semchen. So I just want to set that framework. So because this is the way Buddha people talk about motivate ourselves, because we think, wow, will I have this opportunity again in a future life? How do I want to spend this life? Given that I have exposure to authentic teachers, I have natural affinity for the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Well, what's my direction? I want to mention here, you know, that this is human beings. We're all, you know, whether we like to think of ourselves or that way or not, we're all very influenced by the people around us. And probably most of the people watching this video are not from a Buddhist society or anything like that. So there's not going to be a lot of support probably for you from your family and so forth for pursuing a Buddhist path. People can, we are always mirroring the people around us. You know, if you look at human beings communicating with each other, as we talk to each other, we're emulating the person we're speaking to's energy, intensity, their expressions, the way they use their hands, like I'm using mine here below the screen. And, you know, somebody cries, we cry, and all this kind of thing. We're interdependent, you know, with each other. Our interactions are very important. So it's a big deal if you decide that you as an individual, you want to go in a different direction with this life based on this sense of like urgency that in this life, I want to do something really, really profound. And I want to, for some reason, there's this natural connection with the Buddha way. You know, some people in Western cultures or non-Buddhist societies of any kind will have natural affinity for art displaying, you know, portraying the Buddha. For example, the big example here in the United States is Buddha statues in gardens. People make cement statues of the Buddha based on usually Japanese images of the Buddha, beautiful, refined, peaceful symbols. And I think people put them in their gardens, even though they aren't Buddhists per se, because they get a sense of peace. They get a sense of wisdom, something. And it's particularly perhaps people who have, you know, from my perspective and a sort of Buddhist perspective, a past life, they've had contact with Buddhism or Buddhists, and they made a really good impression. And so something when you look at a Buddha, or it might be for you a bodhisattva such as Tara, Chenmezig, Avalokiteshvara, Kanyen, something like that. There's something in them just relaxes, right? It's like comforting. Wow. And to me, this is it's just cement, you know. There's not necessarily, for a lot of people would look at it and have no meaning whatsoever. And also people buy these just mass-produced Buddhas that are lovely and available at even like dollar stores we have in the United States. Very, you know, for a few bucks you can get a Buddha and put it up on the shelf. People do that. Why? Why do they hang prayer flags? These Tibetan prayer flags where the beautiful Tibetan script is written across them. It's not technically script, but they're block printing of prayers, of good wishes to everyone for every benefit to come. So, you know, a picture of Guru Rinpoche or Tara, Vajrasattva, these Tibetan Buddha, Indo-Tibetan images of our wisdom mind as a Buddha, a fully awakened being. They're printed on there, and then prayers in Tibetan, mantras. And the idea is the wind. People hang them as decorations. But really, it is supposed to be strong so the wind blows through them, and these the idea is that these blessings, you know, are swept around the world via the air. Isn't that beautiful? So a certain kind of mind would say, isn't that nuts? But if you're here, you probably don't have that kind of isn't that nuts kind of mind. Okay, so there's some kind of natural connection here. And there's some kind of appreciation of, you know, this opportunity may not come again. And then maybe there's an idea of an evolving consciousness over time. And evolving, de-evolving. There's no guarantee in Buddhism. It's not an idea. Until you take refuge, there's no idea of onward and upward in Buddhism. You know, have you ever seen Star Trek, an American series? I was raised on that, you know, optimistic ideas about the future. Buddhism doesn't have that. It doesn't have that at all. It's this American feeling that we're always onward, upward, things are getting better and better. Do you have that in your culture? I don't know, but it's been cramped by the climate change and by, of course, the pandemic and the uncertainty, whether more pandemics are coming and so forth, a big change in this whole world. But I'm wanting you to balance that, okay? We were thinking pessimistically. We don't know what's going to happen with the world. There's no guarantees. But on the other hand, we're balanced with this idea that we have this incredible chance, maybe more so than ever in the history of the world. We have Buddhism, these brilliant, uplifting, totally pure ideas about how to train your mind and even maybe go on beyond mind to awakening are spread around the world in a way on the air, just like those prayer flags through the cell towers and you know, Wi-Fi connections of the world. Okay, so think things may be going bad externally, but you can make a choice for things to go breakthrough positive. So I think that's the kind of you know, there's the underlying motivation. We all know the Buddha taught that there's suffering is inherent in being a normal sentient being of any kind. We all experience the suffering of change because we haven't discovered deathless wisdom. When things don't go our way, or there's, in fact, oftentimes we've lost someone, some ideal, some body parts, we get old, all the losses in life create suffering. But there's also suffering in the hope, not just our fears, you know, being driven, having our engine in this life being, how am I going to get what I want? How am I not going to have in my life what I don't want? And always struggling and strategizing and striving to this unattainable goal, because everything comes to an end. Even if you get what you want, it might not be what you want in a few days or years or decades. So we stop orienting our life towards finding a soulmate. I'm not saying, you know, you don't marry, whatever. We stop having this tremendous sense of optimism that money or sex or power or love are going to solve our problem, fundamental problem of suffering. This is the Buddha's word. He saw it all. He woke in that night of awakening. He could see all his past lives. He saw everything, the whole big picture about the way things were. And so what we'll do here is we'll sit for a moment, like the Buddha advised, you know, the basic path of Buddhist practice is shamatha, or one-pointedness. And one-pointedness and a pacifying meditation, joined with insight into the non-finding of anything really solid and real about your own personal identity, your storyline, a sort of relaxation into a bright, present awareness that's not tied to a dramatic tale that you create about your childhood, your adolescence, your adulthood, how important everything is, who did you wrong, who did you right, what you love. But just not being able to find anything like that when you search your body and mind for some soul or real entity there. You know, you can't look around, you can't find anything. That's the fundamental breakthrough of vipassana, or clear seeing meditation. Just saying. And, you know, in a way, all Buddhist practices, thousands of them, can be brought down to some aspect of pacifying and relaxing, focusing, and then finding, seeing, you know, the nature of your mind, and then eventually the nature of external, we say phenomena. I hate using big words to translate other words we don't know the meaning of, but anyway, everything we take in and everything we see and experience, you know, the so-called outer world. But today, let's just rest, and then maybe my thread will come back to me. So most people, when they start to meditate, they use their breath. Well, maybe not. Maybe most people use some other object of focus. It doesn't matter. But in Tibetan tradition, some using a visualized like image of a Buddha or Bodhisattva in your mind as a point that you bring your attention back to is key. So whatever you're comfortable with, whatever your tradition is, let's just sit for a minute or two, gently bringing our attention back to the point of focus that we use, without forcing, chastising, etc. So having create this desire, this aspiration to move not only personally beyond, hopefully, we're not only moving beyond personal suffering and discovering a state of peace, but in most of the teachers that you're seeing here, I think all of them maybe, are coming from the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, where we also aspire to attain awakening and then vastly benefit beings equally, So with that motivation, we decide we want to enter into the Buddhist path. And how do you do that? What's the first step? Well, the first true step is this taking refuge. And I'm using the word taking refuge it's kind of incorrect. The correct way of saying it would be going for refuge. At least in Tibetan, kyabdro, going for refuge. It implies activeness. And this is kind of what I'm emphasizing today. Individual choice, taking charge of your own life and not being so influenced by people around you, but discovering your own inner calling, right? And then actively choosing to enter into the Buddhist path, making a clear decision about it. And that's what refuge is. So refuge is, in the simplest sense, is you can find every Buddhist text has refuge at the beginning. You can decide on that in yourself. But I recommend going to a preceptor, a spiritual teacher, Dharma teacher who you respect, and doing a formal ceremony. A beautiful way of doing it is like going to a retreat or something like that, if you can. We all know what's going on in the world, but when there's a window of safety to go to a Dharma center in person, that would be great. And what typically happens is that you're at a retreat or something and you say, I want a refuge. I want to formally take refuge. And so things are already set up at the temple. Everything's in gear. The teacher is there. They're in their uniform. And so you can just say, I want a ceremony, and they say, okay, we'll do it between session 1 and 2 on Tuesday morning. And anybody else who wants to come can come. The world isn't so often, we're not so lucky these days that that's often the case that we can do that. But if you can, do it. Make sure it's someone you can, try to make sure it's someone you think you can respect. Even if you never see them again, you have a really good feeling about them. Don't, if you have a bad gut feeling about a teacher, you probably know in your heart there's something off. Choose another teacher to do it with. But here we are. A lot of people are now exposed to Dharma, and it's beautiful, from all over the world who don't live in a Buddhist society. Their whole state may not have a Buddhist center, or their province, whatever. What do you do? Well, there are teachers, many of them, particularly seems to be the small center teachers. Like me, I'm kind of, I'm not a big deal. I'm just like someone who teaches the how-to people who come to me for that. The world now is a Dharma center, but like put in charge of this little tiny center in your home or whatever. I'm that kind of person. So that level of people, they're not so busy. So they're oftentimes the ones that can do a refuge ceremony for you. It's beautiful, though, to take refuge if you have an opportunity to take refuge in an interactive environment with someone really awesome, like a, very awesome, like, we have Tenzin Palmo, Jetsama. She's she's someone you look at and you go, whatever she's got, I want that. That's, I'm going to commit to Buddhism because of that, right? Whatever she's got. When you read her story. And the many other teachers here, some will do refuge ceremonies, some won't. Anyway, try to get an interactive environment going. If you can get a group going, it's something inspiring about having other people taking refuge, going for refuge with you. And then the ceremony is Very simple, actually. But there's a few commitments you should know about before you get into it that are particularly important if you're coming from a non-Buddhist society. 4 that are coming to mind. One is you have to stop harming sentient beings, killing in particular. So if you're accustomed to, or your family is, you can't control your family. But anyway, what you have control over is yourself. So if you're accustomed to spraying insects when they become a nuisance, ants in your kitchen, if you're accustomed to killing mice and rats, if you're accustomed to going hunting or fishing, that needs to come to an end, you know. And this, of course, we're killing sentient beings accidentally all the time, but when we're with our intention in our mind, whenever we possibly can, we need to abstain from harming and killing sentient beings. Understood? So that's a commitment you're taking inherent with the refuge ceremony. Okay? And the other thing is, you're from then on, you're paying respect to the Buddha and his representatives, monks and nuns, and these beautiful, you know, lay teachers with their, you know, that some we've had in the Tibetan tradition. We have some amazing non-monastic teachers, and so even the piece of their robes, you know, a thread from their robes, then you regard as an exalted, you know, uplifted kind of thing. And, or a little, you know, if you have at least, they call them satsas in the Tibetan society, even if you have a little clay figurine of a Buddha, it's not very detailed, maybe not very lovely, it's cracked or whatever, still it's of the Buddha. So you put it in a high place, you know, the floor is dirty, you get it up above your waist level somewhere, keep it, or discuss, you need to dispose of it someplace, do it someplace respectfully. Text, don't step over them on the floor, this kind of thing. This is actually part of your refuge vow. So, you know, we all fall over and step over. You know, the point is your mind, not that, not a rule. So that's number 2. Number 3 is really a big deal for people coming from a monotheistic religion or a theistic religion, polytheistic religion like goddess worshipping, shamanic traditions, where we really see God or goddesses or gods or, you know, some entity, pervasive or local, as who we go to in hard times, who we're devoted to. Gods and goddesses are viewed as sentient beings in Buddhism. They're not a Buddha. They're not fully awakened. Anything that is regarded that we think of as having a there, you know, a personhood, a will, a mind, and so forth. This is going to come to an end eventually. It's impermanent. Nothing like that can stay. Frame of mind of an entity can go on and on. Buddhas are not like that. They're not things. Or they're not. I don't know how to put it. There's not a I there, you know. So. You need to think about this, you know, whether you can give up this God idea, God worshiping idea. You know, there is many traditions, Buddhist traditions, they also will, you know, appease or respect the local entities that they perceive in traditional societies. Maybe you perceive them in the in your own culture. They'll have little ceremonies of offering tea or burning tobacco or whatever is the native tradition. And that's not an issue as long as you understand that Buddha, Dharma, Sangha are what we call your refuge. As soon as you come under the care, you go for refuge, the belief is that eventually, be it eons and eons, through that intention and that commitment in this life, You can't continue your commitment to future lives. You won't even remember this one next time around probably, but you'll discover it over and over again, and eventually you will attain complete awakening, even if you don't, practice diligently in this life, right? So you're under the Buddha's protection. Things will go smoother. That's the idea in this life. So you're on the path. So this is, we want to direct our mind diligently, every day, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. The Sangha are your support and friends along the path. You're a gang of your Buddhist support. And that kind of leads us to another topic, which is who are we hanging around with? I've already discussed how influenceable we are by the people around us, and we're in a non-Buddhist society, right? So we can't probably always be around other good Buddhists with very pure minds, but then I think we should be using the internet and visual images as support, as we go through our lives. If we're alone as a Buddhist, or only have, intermittent contact with our support. This, pictures in our house and so forth, and just try to stay away from, typically, in a Buddhist society, they say stay away from non-Buddhists. You don't want to start picking up, especially when we're starting out. We don't want to picking up and merging in non-Buddhist ideas, because now we're doing things Buddhist way. And we want to literally learn it and stick with it. So avoid, but maybe the best we can do in our society is to avoid intensively negative people with harming minds, killers, people who are rough. As much as we can, distance ourselves and stay with positive people with uplifted minds who are kind and loving, right? You'd say, who doesn't want that? But early childhood training is a big thing, and we may have gotten accustomed to shouting and harming, worse, battering and so forth from abuse in our childhoods, alcoholism and drug addiction. You may yourself be struggling with. We just do the best we can do to, distance ourselves from people who enable our bad habits, and come closer to people that hold something as close as we can get to Buddhist values in the world around us in our day-to-day lives. Okay? What was is that the final one? Did I do 4? I hope so. So I wanted to discuss this. So you were making a commitment then by doing a refuge ceremony. And what does the ceremony consist of? Well, there'll usually be a shrine, an altar, images. So you're really taking refuge in front of an image of the Buddha, or in the Tibetan system, or these Mahayana systems, there may be another image like Guru Rinpoche, or who's the second Buddha. You can take refuge using that kind of image, and then you have what it may look like you're actually taking refuge, that you're representative there. So you've got a really great teacher. They are like an emanation of the Buddha. They're your Buddha, right, in your life. So if you have that kind of pure uplifted feeling, you may find yourself, just sitting with them, taking refuge. But typically you're bowing to the statue of the Buddha. So you get down on, you bow when at the beginning of the ceremony. They'll have you recite words of the kind of things we've talked about, requesting refuge, and then you will, your preceptor will have you get down on one knee, if you can, and just say, I go to for refuge to the Buddha, I go to refuge into the Sangha, I go for refuge in the Dharma, not in that order. And you repeat after them. It's probably in Sanskrit or Buddha, or your local language of your teacher, Tibetan, Korean, Chinese, etc. 3 times, and the 3rd time, you're a Buddhist. And isn't that wonderful? Then the teacher will go over what your commitments are, the ones I just spoke of. There may be some smaller ancillary commitments, and then say some prayers, and you're off. You're a Buddhist. Okay, so that's the order of things. All that bodhisattva stuff and tantric commitments and so forth, they're all predicated on having taken refuge. If you're in the Tibetan system, you received an empowerment, technically there are refuge and bodhisattva vows in the ceremony. So you have taken refuge, whether you know it or not. But it's really good to have a separate ceremony. Now, if you were a kid born in a Buddhist society, probably a Buddhist, and your devout family, probably a Buddhist teacher gave you a refuge, did a refuge ceremony for you when you were too young to remember, and gave you a new name. You'll get a new name. Sometimes they take a clipping of your hair, symbolizing, ordination. You're not ordaining as a monk or nun, but this is your connection with the Buddhist tradition. Sometimes they don't. And then sometimes they give you a new name, and it's often in Tibetan or Korean, Chinese, etc., from the culture that your tradition is from, or that tradition is from. Then that refuge ceremony, it transfers wherever you've gone, whatever tradition you end up in. It's okay. If you've taken refuge, you are a Buddhist. This is true it's universal. So you don't have to take refuge again in the new tradition. If you want to, sit in the back, particularly when other people are taking refuge with a great teacher or whatever. It's a good connection to make, but not necessary. You're done with that level. And now your practice is some form of focusing your mind and discovering your true nature beyond this, what we think of as the I or self, and then the nature of external phenomena. And so your study and diligent study and practice for the rest of your life. But even if you don't have time and you've got 1,000 kids and 1,000 jobs, or you're being shuttled from one refugee camp to another, you can just imagine the Buddha, whatever image you like of the Buddha, and say, I take refuge in the Buddha. Imagine the Sangha may be a vast assembly of monks or nuns, for example, or the people that you love who are your co-journeyers on the path in good times. Imagine they're the Sangha. Imagine have a pile of maybe beautiful Buddhist books, the pure Buddhist teachings, and just say, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, right now. And whatever you're doing, that doesn't take time, and you can do it anywhere. And so with this intention, pure uplifted intention, things will even if you can't practice much in this life, over the period of lifetimes, it'll work out. Okay? So is there anything else that I should talk about today? Whatever level of Buddhism we practice, this is what comes to mind as I close my eyes there for a second, was love, Whatever level of Buddhism we practice, we are always cultivating love for living beings. So I'm just going to leave you with this way. It's so hard we have a very divided world these days. More and more we're living in our own little pockets again, just like we were hunter-gatherer tribes hundreds of thousands of years ago. And we are becoming adversaries. So if you're having a hard time loving sentient beings, reflect on the fact that we were conditioned to be team members. It's always one team against another, one gang, one, group against another. Our school is the best. We form judgments. There's good animals and bad. Snakes are bad. Cockroaches are bad. Elk are good. Bears are scary. All these judgments all the time. Human beings, my kind of human being, are good. Those kind of human being are bad. Really, I would urge you to kind of drop that. At least part of your day. And when that comes up, let's work with our minds about that and practice a loving kindness for everyone, okay? It's easy to get passive aggressive about that they say in psychology, where, oh, I love you, but I hate you. Like you're saying I love you and you don't really mean it. Not like that. But what you can do in a practical terms is find some good quality. Well, the one good quality, well, they did one positive thing, or they have one positive mental attribute. And everybody has that, something. So, and focus on that. And when you think about that person mentally, especially when they're not there, so you can practice without them being there, think of that quality first, They love, for example, they're Buddhists, but they're also a thief. You think, they love the Buddha. They love their teacher. I can really see that in them, and that's really positive. Think, wow, that's a really good quality. Or they always remember your birthday, or something like that. Or even though they hate me, they take care of their family, So let's try this world needs more love, genuine love. It doesn't mean you have to be a patsy, as we say in my American culture. It means like a pushover, a doormat, we'll say. You don't have to be somebody that you let everybody abuse you to be a Buddhist. Remember that you can set firm boundaries, and you can say no and still practice loving kindness for everyone. Okay? I think on that note we'll come to a close. It's been wonderful spending this time reflecting on the most important thing maybe you can do in this life. Refuge vows, and then later if you want to take bodhisattva vows. This is something you're doing that, imagine just taking refuge. You're not ever going to harm sentient beings. What if everybody took refuge and did their very best not to hurt others? Wouldn't that be amazing? We're not proselytizers, but here you found the Dharma. You can be a new non-harmer. Just that alone. It's incredible. All right. Take care. If you have any questions, I'm sorry I can't be there live with you, but message me. Our website for my organization is Mayum, M-A-Y-U-M, mountain.org, and on the front page there's a way to send an email, and you can find me that way. All right, take care now. Bye, everybody.